Hello and welcome. I'm Sima Katauka and you're watching the World Report on NewsX World. Let's take a look at the top headlines of this hour. President Arshande Touadéra is seeking a third term as general elections began today after a 2023 constitutional change scrapped term limits. However, Touadéra is still favored to win over opposition figures Anicet George Doluguele and Henry Maria Dondra, with provisional results due on January 5th next year. Britain and Germany have signed a $70 million joint procurement deal to acquire the RCH-155 mobile artillery system. As the UK Defence Ministry said, the system can fire 8 rounds per minute, with units to be tested by both the British and German armies. Fresh clashes have been reported in Eastern Democratic Republic of the Congo in Uvira, where M23 rebels seized the strategic town earlier this month despite a US-brokered peace deal reaffirmed by Kinshasa and Kigali. Congo's army reportedly struck M23 positions with drones at Kalundu port on Lake Tanganyika. South Korea's President Lee Jae-myung has appointed conservative politician and former United Future Party lawmaker Lee Jae-hyun as the budget minister, signaling a cross-party move as Lee Jae-hyun said she supports the president's goals of economic growth and expanded social welfare. Kosovo is headed to the polls today in its second election of this year, with nationalist Prime Minister Albin Kurti and his Vetevendosje party seeking a majority to end a year-long political deadlock that has paralyzed the parliament. Failure to form a government risks derailing the ratification of $1.2 billion in EU and World Bank loans. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky is set to meet with US President Donald Trump in Florida's Mar-a-Lago. Key topic of discussion will be Zelensky's 20-point proposal for peace between Russia and Ukraine. Russian Foreign Minister Lavrov says the European Union troops in Ukraine would be legitimate targets for Russia. Lavrov, without providing evidence, has also accused European politicians of being driven by ambitions in their relations with Kyiv. The United Nations has renewed its call for an immediate ceasefire in Sudan. UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres has highlighted the humanitarian crisis, with nearly 12 million displaced since the war began. Now for this hour, we start with the breaking news. French actress and animal rights activist Brigitte Bardot has passed away at the age of 91. Bardot rose to global fame with her breakout controversial role in the film And God Created Women, which came out in 1956, directed by her then-husband Roger Vadim. She starred in 47 films during her career, working with renowned directors like Jean-Luc Godard on Les Mépris and Louis Malle on Viva Maria, for which she was nominated for a BAFTA Award for Best Foreign Actress. She was also a passionate activist, using her platform to campaign for animal protection worldwide. Now for this hour, we start with Middle East. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has departed for Florida for his meeting with US President Donald Trump. Netanyahu will first meet US Secretary of State Marco Rubio, followed by a key meeting with US President Donald Trump at Mar-a-Lago. Officials say the discussions are expected to focus on US-Israel relations and regional security. Netanyahu will wrap up his Florida trip on 1st of January. Trump and Netanyahu last met in October 2025 at the Knesset in Jerusalem. The meeting marked a landmark moment in the Middle East, centered on a US-brokered ceasefire and hostage release deal during Trump's visit. Now for this discussion, we welcome Mr. Ali Muhammad Abushbak. He's a Middle East researcher, joins us live from Cairo. Thank you very much, Mr. Abushbak, for joining us again. Great to see you. Now that this is Netanyahu and Trump's fifth meeting, what is on the table of discussion for them this time?
Thank you for having
Thank
me.
you.
Thanks is a several of topic that Benjamin Netanyahu is going to focus and in his agenda. First of all, the future of Gaza and the threat from Hezbollah in Lebanon and the threat of Iran after that Israelis war in June with Iran. So Benjamin Netanyahu is trying to drag Donald Trump and America to new phase of conflict with Iran. And according to Donald Trump, he confirmed and declared that the nuclear weapon have been erased and have been demolished from the last war between Iran and Israel. So the thing is, Benjamin Netanyahu is trying to convince Donald Trump and switch the focus to another stage of aims and of plan for him. Now his focus is not about the Iranian nuclear after the declaration from Donald Trump, according to him that Donald Trump, he many times declared it that the nuclear weapon had been solved in Iran, and now Benjamin Netanyahu is switching into the another aims about the Iranian missiles. According to several of analysis, the Iranian missile is continuously have been addressing in Israelis news paper and in Israelis media outlets. So Benjamin Netanyahu is going to put this on the table and negotiate and discuss about the future of the Iranian missile. According to Benjamin Netanyahu, Iran has a huge arsenal of missiles and destruction missiles against Israel, and this is for him one of the significant threat for the security of Israel and the exist of Israel. One part, another part, the ability of Hezbollah, especially after Hezbollah denied to lie down its weapon and disarm. That's a huge challenge for for Benjamin Netanyahu, and he wants a green light and cover for his war against also Hezbollah in South Lebanon. This is one of a second reason for the meeting, but also here it should be worth
Yes.
mentioning that the place itself, Florida, why Benjamin Netanyahu is not going to visit Washington after Mondani he became a mayor for Washington, and he announced several times he's going to arrest Benjamin Netanyahu if he tried to visit Washington. This is one of a sign that maybe American policy have been changed and it will be also be more equal.
Yes.
As you know, Benjamin Netanyahu, he's called by international court according
Yes.
to the case and that
Yes.
filed by South African against him as a war crime.
Yes.
And
Yes.
also the situation
How
in
much?
Gaza itself,
Yes.
about the future of Gaza, he is going to address. Today, Germany announced that they are not going to participate in international stabilization forces, and the future of international stabilization forces is still clear. It's not clear about it who's going to participate, except Italy and Indonesia, who declared that they are going to join and in this international
Mr.
stabilization.
Bushwick, Mr. Bushwick, yes, like I completely agree with you. There's like, it seems like maybe like how at least I used to think that Israel and America or US policies are 100% aligned. We see some fragments of that not being true here and there. So what's your analysis? How aligned do you think Israel and President Trump and Netanyahu are right now?
Uh, It seemed that Donald Trump he was clear about the region, especially Middle East. He considered the diplomatic and the peaceful tools as one of significant tools to solve the conflict. While Benjamin Netanyahu he considered the military hegemony and military pressure. It's one of the only tool to solve the conflict in Middle East. He won't just only uh, extend his power and want to dominate the area. He want to hegemonize the area, and he want also to extend the state of Israel. As you've seen, Israel continuously invaded Syria. Especially Syria doesn't provoke Netanyahu, and it's not considered one of the threaten against Israel, especially after the Muhammad this Shara he become a president and the situation is unstable. Israel took the opportunity about the situation of the minority in Syria, like doors as a pretext to invade and to bombard Syria. As well as the same things happen in Lebanon. Hezbollah is not provoking. Israel is not responding against the Israelis' violation against the ceasefire with Hezbollah. But still, Benjamin Netanyahu considered that Hezbollah is trying to restructure and rebuild its power ability. As well as in Gaza, there is a daily violation for the ceasefire agreement in Gaza. Continuously, Israel bombed Gaza, and there is no future for the Israelis withdraw in Gaza. And up to now, Benjamin Netanyahu is considered, Hamas is considered one of the significant threats for Israel. While Donald Trump, he considered the diplomatic and he considered himself as a peacemaker. He considered after the declaration of the ceasefire between Israel and Hamas, he considered himself the man who solved the conflict in Middle East that longed for more than 300 years. So here is one of the, I mean. Disagreement and a huge gap between the policy between Benjamin Netanyahu and Donald Trump. He's trying Benjamin Netanyahu and
Yes.
accompanied with his wife Sarah to convince Donald Trump to continue the way to continue this approach, which approach the military approach to end and to solve the situation in Middle East. And also, we have seen after Benjamin Netanyahu, he bombed Qatar. Uh, Donald Trump, he forced him to apologize and to, to share his explanation and
Yes.
to, I mean,
Mr.
announce that hitting Qatar, it was one of the mistake of Israel. So here is showing the
Mr.
huge
Bushback,
gap between the policy, but I'm not optimist
Mr.
because
Bushback,
Donald Trump he will not go to turn his back to Benjamin Netanyahu and let him to wage a war alone,
Mr. Bushback,
especially.
thank you very much for joining us. Unfortunately, we're running out of time for this discussion, but thank you very much for joining us today once again and sharing that insight from Cairo. Now we move on to Africa. Hopes for peace in the Eastern Democratic Republic of the Congo are dwindling after new clashes erupted in Uvira. M23 rebels captured the key town earlier this month, defying a US-brokered peace deal between Rwanda and the DRC. Despite agreeing to the deal, M23 is negotiating separately with Kinshasa in Qatar. The United States accused Rwanda of violating the agreement, while M23 has promised withdrawal. However, locals report that many rebels, either in plainclothes or police uniforms, remain in Uvira. Congolese forces have accused M23 of regrouping in the surrounding hills. On Friday, Congolese drones have targeted M23 boats at Kalungdu port in Lake Tanganyika. The violence has forced tens of thousands of civilians to flee, overwhelming neighboring Burundi's refugee camps. Hopes for peace in the Eastern Democratic Republic of the Congo are dwindling after new clashes have erupted in Uvira. M23 rebels captured the key town earlier this month, defying a US-brokered peace deal between Rwanda and DRC. Despite agreeing to the deal, M23 is negotiating separately with Kinshasa in Qatar. The United States has accused Rwanda of violating the agreement, while M23 has promised withdrawal. However, locals report that many rebels, either in plainclothes or police uniforms, remain in Uvira. Congolese forces have accused M23 of regrouping in the surrounding hills. On Friday, Congolese drones targeted M23 boats in Kalundu port in Lake Tanganyika. The violence has forced tens of thousands of civilians to flee, overwhelming the neighboring Burundi's refugee camps. Hopes for peace in the Eastern Democratic Republic of Congo are dwindling after new clashes have erupted in Uvira. M23 rebels have captured the key town earlier this month, defying a U.S.-brokered peace deal between Rwanda and the DRC. Despite agreeing to the deal, M23 is negotiating separately with Kinshasa in Qatar. The United States has accused Rwanda of violating the agreement, while M23 has promised withdrawal. However, locals report that many rebels, either in plainclothes or police uniforms, remain in Uvira. Now for this discussion, we welcome Mr. Ayanuga Olugbenga-Paul. He's a public affairs analyst, joins us live from Lagos. Thank you very much, Mr. Paul, for joining us again. Good to see you. Now, thank you. Now, looking at Rwanda and DRC and the fresh clashes in Uvira, once again, what does M23's decision to negotiate separately with Kinshasa in Qatar while defying U.S. broker deal reveal about limits of international mediation? Do you think that the foreign mediators like U.S. have limited understanding of this conflict and history?
Well, I've always maintained that any negotiation that does not involve the active player on ground. The last negotiation that was signed, I think, on December 4th in Washington involved President Tshisekedi and President Kagame, but no representative of M23 rebel were there. And I'm sure that apart from M23 rebel, there would also be other fringe rebel group who are also players in the ongoing conflicts that were not factored in. And I also mentioned that understanding other foreign axes of power who have their own interest in the country not represented in the negotiation will also, have their say at the end of the day. So I believe that it is not that the foreign players like US, it's not that the negotiation they did was ineffective. It is that they did not bring all the players, both major and minor, into the agreement. They only brought two major axes of power into the agreement. The other axes of power are not considered. Yes, while you might say Rwanda is sponsoring M23 rebel, but the fact is that M23 rebel is gaining a lot of ground, and from my own understanding of insurgency from time immemorial across different countries, not just even Africa, you will see that without local support for the rebel, they will not be this successful. Immediately after the signing of the agreement, they took a lot of territories in the Eastern Congo that they have not taken before. They also took Uvira recently, and then there is this escalation of violence. They want to negotiate to have their own autonomy, because don't forget that many of the ethnic Hutus and who are caught up in the quagmire that we have right now, they don't want to go back to Rwanda, and they need to have their own place within the frame of things in Congo, where they will have their own voice. They've been there for more than 30 years now, since the 1994 genocide, and so they have nowhere else to go. And some of them have established themselves as local warlords and rulers. If all these negotiations do not put all this factor into consideration, then we are just playing to the gallery. Yes, I'm with you.
Mr. Paul, thank you for highlighting that once again. You know, the people on the ground who are involved actively in this fighting were missing. So why do you think, what are the challenges to bringing them all on the table to negotiate this peace? Why were they missing?
One of the challenges is trust. So they don't want you to bring them into a place where you would arrest them or where you will weaken their position. They don't want to lose the territory that they have already gained. So these are factors that, even you saw that during the signing in December for President Tshisekedi doesn't seem to be happy with the signing. It was only President Kagame that seems enthusiastic from the body language, with the signing. And President Tshisekedi has made it clear that he is not ceding any territory in Congo as we know it, to any rebel group. And the rebel group are not willing to cede the territory that they have gained back to the government. So these are gray areas that need to be talked about deeply, and there should be an atmosphere of trust that can be created, because if trust is not there, the rebel will not feel comfortable to want to come to negotiate, knowing fully well that it is almost like a death sentence for them if they lose some of the territories that they have gained. That, to me, is one of the factors. And don't forget that the territories that they have gained are the majorly mineral-rich territory that the government wants back by all means.
Right. Thank you very much for highlighting that. Very insightful. Mr. Paul, as always, please stay with us and we come back to you for our next discussion as well. Now, moving on to Guinea. Guinea has held a presidential election today with victory all but assured for Mamadi Doumbouya, the general who led the junta that has seized power back in 2021. By running, he is breaking a pledge to hand power back to civilians by the end of 2024. All main opposition leaders have been barred from standing. Some 6.8 million people can vote among 9 approved candidates, including Doumbouya, who is running as an independent. Polling is underway with a heavy security presence, including armed vehicles patrolling the streets. UN Rights Chief Volker Turk has said that the campaign was marked by intimidation, politically motivated enforced disappearances, and constraints on media freedom. Doumbouya has highlighted infrastructure projects, the start of operations at the Simandu iron ore mine, and promised to fight corruption. Provisional results could be announced within 2 days. Opposition leader Silio Dalain Diallo has called the vote an electoral charade and aimed at giving legitimacy to the planned confiscation of power. Now for this discussion, we welcome back Mr. Yunuga Olugbenga Paul. He's a public affairs analyst, joins us live from Lagos. Thank you very much, Mr. Paul, for staying with us. Now, looking at this, how does Mamadi Doumbouya's candidacy, after pledging a return to civilian rule, affects the credibility of this political transition, and what more can you tell us about this ongoing situation there?
Well, just like the opposition leaders have called out, it's an electoral charade, and it reminded me of a situation like that almost happened in Nigeria back in 1998, when President Sani Abacha wanted to transmute into an elected president, and he was the sole candidate of all the about 8 or 7 political parties that were approved that year. But for his death on the throne in June that year, he would have also emerged like Doumbouya as an elected president of the country. So it is not a new thing. That it is a way where military, even the current Egyptian president Sisi, he did the same thing to transmit himself from a military president to a democratically elected president. So when you talk about credibility, you shouldn't expect any form of credibility in this election. It is what it is. But I think now that the president becomes a civilian, it is then that the people need to now tactically, non-sentimentally, begin to ask questions in a way that, because he is more answerable to international community now as an as an elected government, is more answerable to ECOWAS, is more answerable to AU, is more answerable to UN now than when he was a military president. And so I think the opposition should look at technical ways to exploit that, to wait till the next election, but while waiting, to build up a platform, an avenue of building the critical mass of the people through mass education, mass voters education, mass understanding, such that even if he wants to rig the next election, yes, the voters would have been so educated that if they are not pleased with his regime, they will vote him out. And of course, it might end up like the case where we had in Guinea-Bissau, where the sitting president saw himself losing the election and then invited the military to stage a coup to make it look as though the military took over. So that can be his only saving grace then. But other than that, the election has taken place, and I think he has won, right now.
Thank you very much, Mr. Paul, once again for joining us and sharing that insight from Lagos. Now we move on to our next news. Staying in Guinea, Guinea's security forces say they have neutralized an armed group accused of having subversive intentions that threat national security. Authorities say these forces also attacked a mosque during the incident, adding to tensions as the country heads into a decisive political moment. Let's listen in.
Il y a eu des tirs à Symphonie Afrikov. Donc, il y a beaucoup de vitres qui sont cachées, de tôles, de murs, il y a tout des tracasses de balles. On est venu pour constater quoi? On est très inquiet. Très inquiet. On est très inquiet parce qu'on n'a pas pu dormir avec les enfants. Tout le monde s'est réporté sur le salon.
The developments come as Guinea holds a crucial presidential election aimed at ending a 4-year transition that began after the military seized power in September 2021. Voting has begun earlier today in a contest widely expected to hand junta leader General Mamadi Doumbouya a 7-year mandate. Completing the return to civilian rule, about 6.7 million people are registered to vote. Polling stations are due to close at 6 p.m. local time, with provisional results expected within 48 to 72 hours. Now we move on to our next news. Coupang's founder and chairman Kim Bom has issued a public apology following a major customer data leak. Kim has promised a compensation plan for affected customers as soon as possible. Authorities say the breach involved data from 3,000 out of Coupang's 33 million customers, which was found on former employees' personal computer. Kim has reassured the public that no information was sold or transferred to any third party. The online retail giant is cooperating with South Korean investigators and has restored all leaked personal data. Kim has also promised new investments and reforms to prevent future breaches. South Korean lawmakers are considering legal action against the billionaire founder, arguing that most of Coupang's revenue comes from domestic sales. Kim's apology comes after heavy criticism for skipping parliamentary hearings on Seoul on one of the country's largest data breaches. That's all we have time for. Keep watching NewsX World for more news updates from around the world.